I think there are definitely are cases, like, I mean, at least the homeless in LA, I think the majority of them, I think most of their brains are fried, so I think it's really hard for you to actually, rehabilitate them. I think the best thing you can do is just put them like in an institution or something. But, when it comes like to a mother, having an abortion.
I'm just saying to go down that.
I mean, well, now
to go down the thing.
Like rehabilitation.
So
versus,
somebody somewhere. Well, okay. So I'll answer my own rhetorical question just to move it along, because there's a reason I think I'm not being very clear. Say you have a man who buys an ice cream truck, takes it through a neighborhood, takes a 10-year-old, puts them in a sex dungeon, rapes them repeatedly, murders them, and eats their body, and gets caught. Then he's put on trial. And on the trial, they find all these videotapes that he made of it. It's clearly him. He clearly raped, murdered, and cannibalized this child. You find him guilty. A jury says he's guilty. What should the punishment be for that person? They've killed a child.
I say life in prison. At the very least, life in prison. And I think also, as just a matter of policy, advocating for the death penalty, most people sit on death row anyways.
Yeah.
And rarely do they actually get killed. And it's actually more costly. So just from a policy level, I think, the death penalty is really useless. Also policy level, I think it's not helpful. But also, like, morally, it's a question of, like, how much do you respect life?
So, exactly. So, here's
how sanctity.
So if the sanctity of life, say you have the sanctity of life that I have, if you murder someone, you forfeit your life. So a video comes, you see in that video someone murdering a child, they're found guilty, and they're dead by the end of the week. And everyone knows it. In that society, do you think people are murdering children as much or less? Because
repeat the question one more time.
So you murder someone, you're found guilty of murdering that someone, and you forfeit your life, and you're dead by the end of the week. The message is sent. We believe in the sanctity of life. We act swiftly and justly against murderers. All would-be murderers know and understand that you forfeit your life if you murder. That is a culture that has far less murder.
I think you forfeit your life in the sense that now you go to prison, not in the sense that you are now killed.
Yeah, you go to prison, you get HBO, you get 3 meals a day, you're warm in the winter, you're cool.
Right, but now you're no longer a threat to the outside world. And it's also
and life is not being treated with sanctity or justice, the life that you took. Well, because you took a life, but you didn't lose your life.
Well, but I guess that also goes down to, can God save that person? And I believe he can.
I say God can still save that person. That's why every person, before they get the death penalty, they hear the gospel.
Really save their life at that point.
No, you're supposed to share the gospel with people on death row.
Right.
We work hard to do that, I think, still. Like a, minister goes in and talks to them and stuff.
And, as you should minister, like, you should proclaim the gospel to these people, especially, the ones who are in life in prison.
And I'm not saying that in every instance. I'm just saying, what should the law be if we were going to have a fully just society? It would be a society that did have in their laws life for life. Now, would you always?
Also God says turn the other cheek. That is.
You would have turn the other cheek. You'd have
but
that.
You're still taking the life. That is what Jesus rebukes is, an eye for an eye.
Yeah.
Do that. Turn the other cheek.
Yeah. No, Jesus isn't rebuking the idea of justice.
Well, no, I'm not saying that he is, but the idea that
Jesus is saying,
I steal a loaf of bread, I cut your hand.
Well, that's not equal. Steal a loaf of bread, lose a loaf of bread. That's equal.
But that is what God does repudiate.
Oh, this is where I was going. Right. I say your laws have life for life in them. That doesn't mean you can't have grace and mercy. You could have that. You could have a culture that does have death penalty, but then does also have mercy, and that's fine. I think that's perfectly fine. But your laws, have to have justice established. When your laws, right now, our laws say if you murder a human, you will be punished, unless that human is your child and in your womb. You will not be punished. That's what our laws say now. If we changed them and said, hey, justice system's messed up. We got a lot to fix here, but at minimum, the laws against murder are going to be applied equally to all humans. Same trials, same process, same everything. If you adjusted it to that and said, and that's going to apply to preborn humans, in that culture, you would have far less murders of preborn humans. You'd start to get the same number of preborn humans murdered as born humans, because you face consequences murdering a born human, and you think to yourself, can I get away with this? You'd still have the same thing with abortion. But there would be a certain number of people who are being told, wow, if I order this pill and take this pill, I'm guilty of murder? I don't want to be guilty of murder. But right now we have a culture that says you're not guilty of murder. And so we have lots of people taking pills, having abortions, and not realizing that they're guilty of murder. The problem is they actually are. So whether they get in trouble or not, they're standing before God with that on their conscience. They're murderers before God. Which is why outside of the law, we just share the gospel.
Well, yeah, I guess that is the difference between, God's law and man's law. And man's law should try to imitate God's law as closely as we can. But
you're not for that, because God's law says...
No, I am for that.
If you enjoy my videos, don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you want to create clips like these fast, try Opus Clips. It's smart, simple, and built for creators.